for a month. They gave me 4 months suspended at one. Got hooked on crystal meth, and my life beginning to really spiral out of control. But there was something happening, something was changing inside of me. But man, God's Spirit and that experience in my bedroom totally changed everything. And in that moment, for me, everything that I had read in the book, the Bible, everything I read about the Holy Spirit and the disciples was real. Knowing that God loved me, that He cared about me, that I was created on purpose, for a purpose, just changed my life so radically. 4 brothers and 2 sisters, and we moved to Australia in 1988. My parents went through a divorce when I was in grade 1 to grade 4, and I just remember how much that affected me as a young person. I was back and forth between houses, you know. I think I worked it out recently that I had lived in 31 different houses before I was 31. You know, my early childhood was what I would say broken, and I don't remember lots about it, and what I do remember, it was pretty difficult. Been to 4 primary schools and 3 high schools by the time I was in grade 10. I hardly ever went to school. Met this guy, and he was dealing drugs and things, and people would come in and out getting on, and I would see all sorts of things, you know, punch-ons and like drugs. I've seen, you know, people boot up in front of me and all sorts of horrible things like that. By that time, I was involved in drinking and partying, and just about every weekend we would be drinking, me and my friends, and smoking weed, and found that I became really aggressive on alcohol, and I started getting into fights and punching on, and just remember this false affirmation that came from that, where I was like, ooh, people are talking about me, oh, this feels good, you know, is this who I am? Like, the things, like, I remember thinking I would never do hard drugs, you know, and then one day we were on a houseboat, and this girl I knew offered me some speed, and I snorted a few lines of speed in the bathroom, and it was like, that was really the beginning of venturing into heavier drugs, and my life beginning to really spiral out of control. See, I moved out of home when I was 16. I moved into a house with a bunch of other guys, and this house was just a party house. Mass amounts of people. Police would always be there. It was the kind of house that people walked past walked on the other side of the street to get past it. They just avoided it completely. Street fights, knives pulled on us, and you know, just fights in the street because you're just drunk and wasted, and just all sorts of things. Ended up, you know, getting arrested a heap of times, and got hooked on crystal meth. And I remember that thing just really taking control, you know, and my life got pretty messed up. There was some points where I would wake up in the gutter and not know where I'd been. Sometimes I would come to, like, I would black out, and then I would come to just walking in a park somewhere and not know where I'd been or what I'd done. You know, I was pretty lost. I was pretty broken, you know, sleeping around, taking drugs, drinking like crazy, getting arrested. And then, you know, street fights and things like that. You know, I'd been in a joyride in a stolen car and just done so much damage. Broken into places just to steal booze and things, you know, selling drugs. Some of those points where I was walking around with like 1,000, you know, pills, 2,000 pills just in my backpack, and you know, smoking meth and things like that, you know, and ended up going to jail for a month. They gave me 4 months suspended at one, and I just remember being in jail and thinking, man, some of the things I've been doing in life are hectic, they're crazy. You know, some of the fights and, you know, just the things that had happened to me, being robbed at gunpoint and had knives pulled on me, and, you know, just the stuff that we were doing, the things we were involved with were were crazy, and the drugs. And if I had have ever got busted for some of those things, I would have been in serious trouble. And here I am in jail now for drink driving and driving without a license, and some minor kind of charges really in the scheme of things. And it really got me thinking though. I started to think, man, life is not great. Hey, there's got to be more than this. And so I was 21 in jail, and when I got out, I started really thinking a little bit more about my life, So there was points where I was like 60 kilos wringing wet, not eating, having nowhere to live, just bouncing around house to house, just staying on people's couches, people who were kind enough to let me sort of stay in their place, and yeah, so I was pretty lost, man, pretty dark place. I tried to get off drugs a couple of times, like I knew it wasn't good, and I moved away a few times and gone and lived somewhere different, tried to get off it, and I had the sweats and nightmares, and I just couldn't do it. I'd just be drawn straight back into that life. I was too lonely, had struggled, just lonely, man, no connection, and but I was always around people and partying, but like there was just this emptiness inside of me and loneliness that I struggled with, and drugs and booze and partying just seemed to fill that stuff. I didn't have to think about it. But yeah, when I got out of jail, I was searching. I was thinking there's got to be more to life than what I'm doing, and I was looking at all sorts of things. I was looking at like all sorts of spiritual things. I was open to the supernatural. My mum was a Christian, and like I never grew up in church or went to church or anything, but I remember my mum telling me about her experience when she was filled with the Spirit of God. And so I had nowhere to live, and she let me come and stay with her for a while. And while I was there, I started really just searching, man, looking at supernatural things, because I was open to the supernatural. I was open to the spiritual realm. I'd had some dark experiences before, and so I knew that there was more than I could see, touch. And then I came across this book that talked about some people in the Bible. So I started talking to Mum, and she was like, knew all the stories and characters, and she ended up giving me her old King James Bible. And I just remember reading it, and like I wasn't much of a reader at the time, but I started in Genesis and then Revelation, different books in the Bible. And then I started in the New Testament. I started reading about Jesus. And at the time, I was so taken by Jesus. I thought, far out. Man, here's this guy who's doing amazing stuff. He's healing the sick. He's raising the dead. But he's hanging out with like thieves and prostitutes and drunkards. And at the time, I just connected with that. I thought, man, that's me. That's where I'm at, And it just really connected the way that he treated people, the things that he said to the religious elite, and the way that he dealt with people who were cast out. I was just like, man, this guy is awesome. And if he can do the stuff that this book says, then, man, there's something to that. That's pretty amazing, And so I read the New Testament a bunch of times, and then I thought, man, if I'm going to find out about Christians, I should probably go to a church. That sort of changed my whole life. She said, Anton, if you want to know if God's real, just ask him. And I was like, oh. And I just remember being in my bed, laying in bed one night, and in my mind I said, God, if you're real, I want to know the truth. And I remember a shiver just ran down my spine when I said that in my mind. I was like, what the heck? And then over the next few days, things started to change. Hey, I started to have these thoughts, and these answers would come to me. And then I was thinking about a church, right? Like, if I'm going to find out about Christians, I should go to a church. And the next day, my mum's friend comes, and she's like, hey, I just saw this sign for these night services down the road at this church. And I was just like, what the heck? I was just thinking about this, a church. So anyway, I went and checked out this church, and I just remember walking in and it being nothing like I expected. But there was something happening. Something was changing inside of me. Like there was nights where I'm coming down off drugs and I can't sleep, but I'd see like a World Vision ad or something and I'd get all teary and things. And I was like, man, where is this emotion coming from? Like what is happening, you know? I felt different, you know, I was starting to feel different. And, you know, the Bible was just making sense. Like the things that Jesus was saying, it was making sense to me, you know. But I still had questions, hey. So I'd said a prayer. I'd been going to church for a little while. I got water baptized even. And those things were significant because, you know, I felt a tug at my soul towards this stuff. And as I said, I was feeling different. But, you know, what was the big game changer for me was the Bible talks about being born again. The Bible talks about God's Spirit coming and living inside of you, His Holy Spirit, that He gives us a new heart, that He makes us a new creation. And up until that point, everything was head. It was like, okay. And I had doubts, even though I'd been baptized, even though I was going to church fairly regular, reading the Bible, I still had these doubts. Is this real or is this just social change? Because if this is, you know, social change, like it's, you know, it's just I'm around good people and they've got good morals and, you know, they're doing, you know, nice stuff and everyone's nice, you know? Or is this real? Is there something more to this? I was in a church service and I'm standing up the back and I don't know what was preached on, but I just had this conviction in my heart, felt this pull to go down the front and get prayer. And I never had people pray for me like that. Never had anyone lay hands on me and pray for me. And I remember just walking out of there going, okay, well, that was weird, you know. But that night when I got home, again, I had this pull at my heart and I felt compelled to get on my knees next to my bed and pray to God out loud. And I never done it up until this point. And I got on my knees and I didn't know what to say. But then the words that they spoke over me came into my head. Lord, fill me with your Holy Spirit. Lord, fill me with your Holy Spirit. Lord, fill me with your Holy Spirit. And on the third time I said that out loud, it was just like, boof, this explosion of power and energy and just like this fire just rushed through me. That's what it felt like. And I just began to shake and shake. My whole body was quaking. I was physically drained. I was emotionally drained. It was like something happened to me and it was just like the love and the power of God just flowed through me. It was like His presence just touched me. Like it was like such a powerful experience. I tried to get up and my legs were like jelly and shaking. I began to cry, hey, because in that moment, for me, everything that I had read in the book, the Bible, everything I had read about the Holy Spirit and the disciples was real. All that doubt that I had just was evaporated. It was paradigm changing. You know, it was so full on. It was like in that moment, it was like, this is real. This isn't behavior change. There is a God and He hears you and He loves you. And it was like, holy smokes. Because that for me was so life-changing. It meant, man, there's some things in my life that aren't right. You know, I was like, there's some things in my life that aren't right and God is real and I need Him. And so I cried on my mum's bed for like ages. God's real, God's real. And she's like, I know. You know, there was some hard stuff. Like I still had a problem with alcohol that I had to deal with over years. But you know what? All the drugs and everything, they just fell away. I never had to do a 12-step program. I never had to do, you know, anything like that. I just lost the desire for drugs. I remember one day getting all my paraphernalia and everything and smashing it up, throwing it in the bin. I was growing a weed plant and I pulled it out and threw it away. You know, there was, just the desire for drugs was going and left me. As I said, life wasn't easy. There was definitely challenges, but man, knowing that God loved me, that He cared about me, that I was created on purpose for a purpose, just changed my life so radically. And you know, I began to serve at the church and began to get more involved in youth. And over the years, I have seen God do incredible things. I've seen lives restored. I've seen physical bodies healed. I've seen emotional trauma healed. God is so powerful, yet He's so loving and gracious. Jesus is so real. He changed my life in so many ways, and He continues to do that. And it's a real privilege to actually walk out my life in relationship with Him and get to share from some of the hard experiences and difficult things that have happened in my life. But here's what I know to be true, that God does work all things together for good. Even the mess, even the junk, even the hard stuff, He makes it beautiful in His time. He makes it beautiful, and He uses our wounds to bring healing and hope to others. And He's done that in my life, and I get to see Him do that through my life, and it's a real pleasure. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden." He said, "My yoke is light. My burden is light. My yoke is easy." Yoke is this thing that they used to put around ox to draw the cart to plow up the field. And Jesus is saying, when we come, His burden, His yoke is light and easy in comparison to the world, in comparison to doing things on our own and trying to plow our own path in life. That is burdensome, it's hard, it's difficult, it's unfruitful, and it isn't rewarding. Ultimately in life, when we go it our own, we will make a mess of it. That was my story, and it's the story of many. We can go after all these things to try and fulfill our lives, like money and work and sex and drugs and power, all those things. And in their place, they are good, but when they take the place of God, when they are stuffed inside our soul to fill a hole that can never be filled outside of God, they become heavy and hard and difficult. And I just want you to know that there's another way. There's another way. It's the way of Jesus. And I would love for you to get on that journey and follow Him in His ways. And if you'd love to do that, reach out to me. I would be more than willing to connect with you around what does that look like? What does that mean? How am I born again? How do I start as a new creation? Bless you heaps, guys.